The crate arrived at dawn, sliding off the dusty freight skimmer like a promise that had traveled too far to remember why it existed. The sun lifting slowly over the human ranch as if it, too, wanted to watch what would happen next. Elias Grange stood alone by the landing pad with his hat in his hands, fingers rough from soil and wire and years of quiet survival. His heart beating in a way it had not beaten in decades, because today was supposed to be simple, lawful, approved by forms and stamps and signatures across 3 systems, a mail-order wife, a woman who wanted land and safety more than adventure, a companion to share meals and silence, not love perhaps, but something steady enough to last. The crate hissed as the seals unlocked, steam curling into the cold air, carrying a scent that did not belong to cattle or grass or iron. Something sharper, metallic and wild. Elias felt his stomach tighten. The manifest flickered on his wrist pad. Biological occupant confirmed, female, origin obscured, delivery complete. No errors detected, the law had spoken. So he stepped forward, forcing himself to smile, telling himself that this was the future he had chosen, the future he could manage. The door slid open. Inside was not the gentle stranger he had imagined during lonely nights, not soft hands or hesitant eyes, but a woman slumped against the crate wall and restraints burned half through. Her skin a deep alien bronze marked by scars that caught the light like old lightning, dark eyes snapping open the instant fresh air touched her face. Calculating, dangerous, alive in a way that made the morning feel smaller. Her hair was braided tight against her skull, woven with bits of metal and bone. Revolver rested in a magnet lock at her hip, unmistakably military, unmistakably illegal. They stared at each other, the universe holding its breath. Her gaze swept the ranch in a single sharp motion, fences, hills, sky, the distant herd, then locked onto Elias, assessing him not as a husband or rescuer, but as a potential threat, her jaw clenched, muscles coiling despite the restraints. And in that instant Elias understood that something had gone catastrophically wrong. "You are not my handler," she said, her voice low and edged with exhaustion, accented by a dozen worlds. "Cut me loose or step back." Elias swallowed, every instinct telling him to run, to call authorities, to report the error before the error noticed him. But something in her eyes stopped him. Not fear, not cruelty, but a burning refusal to surrender. The look of someone who had been hunted long enough to decide she would rather die standing. "I ordered a wife," he said quietly, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "I think the stars mixed up my package." A flicker crossed her face, disbelief, then bitter laughter that broke into a cough. "Mail order," she muttered, "of course. Leave it to fate to hide me in paperwork and promises." Before Elias could respond, the sky screamed. He felt it in his bones before he saw it. The low thunder of engines that did not belong to civilian traffic, shadows passed over the hills, sleek black warships tearing through the clouds. Insignias burned away, transponders silent, predators moving fast. The woman stiffened, her eyes hardening, fear flashing through her like a blade, then burying itself beneath fury. "They found me," she said, "and if they are here, this world just became collateral." Elias looked up, heart pounding, the quiet life he had built cracking like dry earth. He thought of the law, of planetary codes, of how humans survived by staying small and obedient, and he thought of the woman in the crate, an alien gunslinger outlaw delivered to his doorstep by mistake, or by destiny. He could not tell which frightened him more. "Who are you?" he asked, because the answer felt like it would change everything. She hesitated, then met his gaze fully, as if weighing whether the truth mattered anymore. "I was a soldier once," she said, "a princess by blood, an outlaw by decree. I broke their law to stop a massacre, so now I am a lesson, a warning written in bounties and burn marks." The warships descended lower, dust whipping across the pad, alarms howling from Elias's comm tower, his wrist pad flashing evacuation warnings, surrender protocols, legal disclaimers scrolling too fast to read. The law was already choosing its side. "If you stay here," she said, "they will take you to, or worse, make you watch." Elias felt the fear, raw and cold, but beneath it something older stirred, something stubborn and human. The part of him that had crossed half the galaxy to carve a life where no one told him who he could be. He looked at the restraints, at the burns, at the woman who had been reduced to cargo, and he made a choice that would haunt or save him. "This is my land," he said, "and nobody hunts anyone here without my say." He stepped forward, hands shaking, and began to cut her free as the warships locked weapons overhead. The sky, dark with law and judgment, and somewhere between the snapping bonds and the roar of engines, fate leaned closer, watching a human rancher and an alien outlaw take their first step into a battle neither had planned but neither could escape. The restraints fell away with a dull clatter, and for a heartbeat the only sound was the wind rushing through the grass, heavy with dust and threat. The alien woman rolled her shoulders slowly, testing muscles that had been bound too long, pain flashing across her face before discipline smothered it. Elias took a step back, unsure whether he had just freed an ally or unleashed a storm. The warships hovered lower now, their hulls cutting the sunlight into sharp fragments. Loudspeakers crackled to life with a voice that carried authority sharpened by certainty. "Unidentified human. Surrender the fugitive immediately. You are in violation of interstellar law. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action." Elias felt the words hit him like physical blows. The law was no abstract thing out here. It came with guns and fire and the power to erase a life without apology. His ranch, his years of work, the quiet evenings he had built to keep the universe at arm's length, all of it suddenly balanced on a single breath. She stepped forward beside him, close enough that he could feel the heat of her body, smell ozone and old smoke clinging to her skin. "Do not answer yet," she murmured. "They are watching for fear. Fear makes humans predictable." Her hand drifted toward the revolver at her hip, fingers resting lightly, not drawing, just reminding the sky that she was still dangerous. Elias realized then that she had chosen to stand with him rather than run, and the weight of that choice settled heavily on his chest. "I did not agree to this," Elias said aloud, his voice carrying despite the wind. "This delivery was legal, approved. You put her on my land. That makes her my responsibility under colonial homestead statutes." There was a pause, a dangerous one, as if the warships themselves were recalculating. The voice returned colder, sharper. "Homesteader laws do not supersede imperial warrants. The fugitive is an enemy of the state, designated lethal. Surrender now and you will be compensated." Compensated, the word tasted wrong. Elias thought of credits, of how easily lives were reduced to numbers, and he felt something harden inside him. He had not survived this long by bending every time someone bigger told him to kneel. She laughed softly beside him, a sound stripped of humor. "Hear that, human," she said. "Even now they try to buy your spine." Her eyes met his, searching, warning. "If you hand me over, I will not curse you. Survival is its own law. But know this, they will not stop at me. They never do." The warships shifted, weapon ports glowing faintly. The ranch sensors screamed, fences flickering as defensive fields tried and failed to mean something against military power. Elias's heart pounded so loud he was sure they could hear it in orbit. "Why are they so afraid of you?" he asked, needing to understand what he was standing against. She exhaled slowly, as if releasing ghosts. "Because I refused to burn a world," she said. "Because I stood between civilians and a fleet and said no. Because I am living proof that their law is a choice, not a truth." A memory flickered behind her eyes. Children running beneath alien suns, fire falling like rain, orders shouted and obeyed until someone finally broke. Elias saw it without seeing, felt it without wanting to, and the universe felt suddenly very small and very cruel. The voice boomed again. "Final warning, human. Disengage and step away." Elias looked at his ranch, the land that had saved him from becoming nothing, and he looked at the alien woman who had lost everything because she refused to become a monster, and the choice no longer felt like a choice at all. "No," he said, the word tearing free from somewhere deep. "She is under my protection, and if your law says that is wrong, then your law is wrong." For a moment there was only silence. Then the first shot tore the sky open, a warning blast that vaporized a distant ridge, heat washing over the fields, cattle scattering in blind panic, the ground shuddering beneath Elias's boots. She moved instantly, grabbing his arm, pulling him toward the barn as return fire screamed past. "You just crossed a line," she said, and there was something almost like respect in her voice. They ran, dust and debris chasing them, the barn doors slamming shut behind their bodies as impacts rocked the structure. Elias's breath came in ragged gasps, fear clawing at him, but beneath it was a fierce, reckless resolve. Inside the dim shelter, she turned to him, eyes blazing, and for the first time since she arrived, her mask cracked just enough to reveal raw gratitude. You did not have to do that, she said quietly. Now you could have lived. Elias leaned against the wall, hands shaking, staring at the door that separated them from annihilation. Maybe, he said, but I would not have been alive. Outside, the warships repositioned, engines howling, and somewhere deep in the void, fate adjusted its course, because a human rancher had chosen defiance, and an alien outlaw had found something she had not expected. Not safety, not rescue, but a reason to believe again. The barn trembled as another blast struck nearby, dust raining down in slow drifting clouds, the smell of scorched metal and dry hay mixing into something sharp and choking. Elias pressed his shoulder against the thick support beam, every instinct screaming that wood and willpower were not enough against warships. Yet he stayed, because running now felt worse than dying. She moved through the shadows like she belonged to them, quiet, deliberate, checking angles, listening to vibrations through the soles of her boots, her breathing steady despite the chaos outside. The gunslinger, the outlaw, the former soldier, and for the first time Elias noticed how controlled her fear was, not absent, but mastered. They are probing, she said softly, testing how much force they need to break you. Break this place, break me. Elias wiped dust from his eyes, his heart hammering. How long until they stop testing? Her jaw tightened. Until they decide you are expendable. The words settled heavily between them, not spoken with cruelty, but with certainty born of experience. Elias realized she had watched worlds burn in exactly this way, slowly, methodically, while laws justified every scream. Another explosion hit closer, boards cracking, light slicing through fresh gaps in the barn wall. Elias flinched, then forced himself still. He refused to be the shaking human they expected. You said you were a princess, he said, needing something solid to hold on to, something human. How does someone go from that to being hunted across systems? She paused, her hand resting on the revolver grip, her eyes distant now, seeing something far beyond the barn, far beyond this world. I was born to command fleets, she said, to embody obedience dressed as honor, destiny written before my first breath, alliances sealed in bloodlines, wars ended and begun with my signature. Her voice lowered, thickening with memory. Then I learned what those signatures cost, planets emptied, cultures erased quietly, legally. I watched generals toast peace while children starved in the shadows of their victory. Elias listened, the words cutting deeper than the explosions. He had left Earth to escape crowded lies, but the galaxy, it seemed, was built on larger ones. The massacre, he said carefully, was that when you broke their law. She nodded once, a sharp motion. They ordered orbital fire on a neutral settlement, to send a message, resistance breeds extinction. I refused. I turned my fleet's guns away. I ordered evacuations instead. Her hand trembled just slightly, enough for Elias to notice. I thought law would protect me, that truth mattered, but law only protects itself. Outside, the warships shifted formation, the sound changing, deeper, more focused, the kind of sound that meant escalation. Elias felt it in his teeth. They will land troops soon, she said, boots on the ground, easier to take you alive that way, easier to make an example. Elias laughed once, breathless and bitter. All this for one person. She looked at him then, really looked, and something unreadable passed between them. Not just one person, she said, an idea that defiance can come from anywhere, even a human ranch at the edge of nowhere. A sharp crack split the barn wall as a projectile punched through, embedding itself inches from Elias's head. His breath froze. She moved instantly, dragging him down, covering him with her body as debris sprayed over them. For a moment, everything narrowed to heat, weight. Her arms locked around him, strong, protective, impossibly warm. Elias felt her heart pounding against his chest, fast but controlled, and something shifted inside him. Fear tangled with a fierce, dangerous connection. When the noise faded, they stayed like that, too close, too aware, the silence suddenly loud. You shielded me, he said, voice rough, surprised. She pulled back slowly, eyes dark. I do not let innocence die for my choices. I chose this, Elias said. She searched his face, as if looking for the lie, then exhaled. Maybe you did. A new sound rose outside, heavier, rhythmic, troop carriers cutting through the dust. Elias felt the noose tightening. How many? Enough, she said, then hesitated. There is something you should know. He met her gaze, despite the fear. Tell me. They are not just here to arrest me, she said. They cannot, not officially. My bloodline complicates succession, exposes crimes. If I stand trial, too much truth follows. Understanding dawned cold and sharp. They want you dead. She nodded, execution disguised as enforcement, and you are now legally complicit. Elias let out a slow breath, the last illusion of safety dissolving. So there is no surrender that saves us. No, she said softly. Outside, metal screamed as the barn doors began to warp under cutting beams. Time slipping away. Elias's mind raced, fear clawing. But beneath it burned something reckless and human. Then we fight, he said, the words surprising even him. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, studying him. You are a rancher. He shrugged, heart racing. I fix broken things. I know this land, and I am very tired of being told what I am allowed to do. A slow smile touched her lips, fierce and sad all at once. Perhaps fate made fewer mistakes than I thought. She reached out, pressing something small and warm into his palm. A data crystal, old, worn. If they kill me, this survives, proof, names, orders, enough to burn their law from the inside. Elias closed his fingers around it, feeling the weight of her trust, of her past, of a war he never wanted but could no longer avoid. The barn doors buckled inward, light flooding the space, armored silhouettes forming beyond, weapons raised, and as the first soldier stepped through, fate held its breath again, because a human and an alien stood side by side, not as rancher and outlaw, but as defiance made flesh. The first soldiers poured through the torn barn doors in a disciplined rush, armor gleaming, visors dark, weapons leveled with mechanical certainty. Their boots crushed hay and memory alike as if neither mattered. Elias felt the moment stretch thin, his fingers tightening around the data crystal, his other hand shaking as he raised the old ranch rifle he barely remembered how to use. She stepped forward before he could fire, her presence changing the air, her voice carrying command that armor could not hide from. Stand down, she said, and for a heartbeat the soldiers hesitated, training colliding with recognition. Then a new voice cut through the chaos, sharper, amplified, overriding everything. Lethal force authorized. Eliminate the target and all collaborators. The hesitation vanished. Energy fire ripped through the barn, beams slicing support beams like paper. Elias fired blindly, the recoil bruising his shoulder, fear roaring in his ears. She moved like lightning beside him, shots precise, controlled, every movement purposeful, not reckless, not desperate, but practiced in the worst kind of way. They were losing. Elias felt it with a cold clarity, the way a storm feels inevitable when it breaks. Too many soldiers, too much firepower, the barn collapsing around them, and then the ground beneath his feet shuddered, not from an explosion, but from something deeper, heavier, ancient. Both of them froze. The soldiers faltered as alarms screamed across their armor, warnings cascading faster than their systems could process. Seismic anomaly detected, power surge, unknown structure awakening. The earth split, not violently, but deliberately, soil peeling back like a curtain, revealing dark metal beneath, vast and smooth, etched with symbols Elias had never seen but somehow understood. Human symbols, old ones, buried deep beneath the ranch, beneath his life, beneath generations of quiet ignorance. The soldiers stared, weapons lowering despite orders, because the impossible was rising. A warship emerged from the ground, colossal, scarred, unmistakably human in design yet unlike anything flying today. Its hull marked by faded insignia of an era long erased from official records. The first expansion fleet. A ghost story whispered in academies and denied everywhere else. Elias felt his knees weaken. What in the stars is that? She turned to him slowly, eyes wide, shock cracking through her composure. This world, she whispered, this land, it is a sanctuary site. The warship powered up with a sound that felt like a heartbeat returning after centuries. Lights igniting across its hull, systems awakening as if they had been waiting for someone like Elias, someone stubborn enough to stand when ordered to kneel. A voice filled the air, deep, calm, unmistakably human. Identity confirmed, homestead genetic match verified, command authority transferred. Elias staggered back, staring at the ship, at the land, at his hands. What does that mean? The voice answered him alone, Elias Grange, descendant of Captain Mara Grange. This vessel was entrusted to your bloodline, to be hidden until law failed humanity again. The twist hit him like a physical blow, memories he never understood suddenly aligning. His grandmother's stories that made no sense, the insistence on settling here, the land grants that came too easily. This was never just a ranch. The alien soldiers began to retreat instinctively, fear breaking through their discipline as the ancient warship's weapons came online, targeting systems locking not just onto troops, but onto the warships hovering above, power signatures spiking beyond modern limits. She stared at Elias now, not as a protector or ally, but as something else entirely, awe mixing with something dangerously close to hope. You are not collateral, she said, you are the contingency. The command voice continued, protocol sanctuary invoked. All hostile forces ordered to withdraw. Noncompliance will be met with force. The enemy commander laughed bitterly over open channels. Old relics do not frighten empires. Fire. The sky lit up. Modern warships unleashed everything they had, beams and missiles tearing toward the rising relic, and the ancient ship answered, not with brute force, but with precision that rewrote the battle, defensive fields flaring, enemy fire bending and unraveling, weapons failing mid-flight as if reality itself rejected them. Elias watched the impossible unfold, fear replaced by a terrible understanding. This was why she mattered, why her bloodline scared them, why his did too. She stepped closer to him, voice low, urgent. They cannot allow this alliance, human and alien defiance together exposes too much. If this ship transmits what I gave you, their law collapses. He met her gaze, the connection between them burning now, not romantic, not yet, but forged in shared rebellion. Then we transmit. She hesitated, pain flickering across her face. There is a cost. Before he could ask, the truth hit him, the sanctuary protocol, the ship requires a living command interface, bound by blood or bond, and your blood alone is not enough. Understanding slammed into him, the big twist unfolding fully, you mean. She nodded once, grim, my species can complete it through neural bond, through shared command, but it will mark me, erase my legal identity completely, no return, no hiding. Outside, the enemy fleet regrouped, charging weapons again, time bleeding away. Elias took her hands, grounding himself in her warmth, her scars, her reality. You already lost everything for truth, he said. Do not lose yourself too. A faint, sad smile touched her lips. I am tired of running. She pressed her forehead to his, alien skin against human, destiny tightening around them. Then let us end this. As the warship systems began the bonding sequence, alarms screaming across the enemy fleet, fate twisted sharply, because what rose from a quiet human ranch was not just an ancient weapon, but a union no law could contain, and the galaxy would never be able to pretend it had not happened. The bonding sequence ignited like a second sun beneath the ranch, light pouring from the ancient warship in slow pulsing waves, not violent but overwhelming. Elias felt it climb his spine, a pressure behind his eyes as if the ship itself was learning the shape of his thoughts, the shape of her presence beside him. She gasped softly, fingers tightening around his, alien markings along her skin flaring with faint luminescence, pain and resolve crossing her face together, not breaking her, but carving something permanent. Across the sky, the enemy fleet recoiled, then surged forward again, desperation bleeding through discipline. Long-range channels exploded with traffic as distant powers woke to the impossible signal now broadcasting from this forgotten world. A first expansion warship active, sanctuary protocol live, human and alien neural signatures merged. That signal rippled outward faster than weapons fire, racing through relay gates, into councils and courts and hidden archives. Alarms sounded in places that had not known fear in centuries. On the bridge of the ancient ship, systems long dormant aligned, weapons cycling, archives unlocking, the voice returned, deeper now, layered, command bond established, dual authority confirmed, initiating disclosure cascade. She cried out then, not from pain alone, but from memory flooding back, suppressed records, erased histories, worlds renamed and rewritten. She saw the truth of the empire she had fled, and Elias saw it too, through her, through the bond humanity's early alliances, betrayals signed in secret, laws forged not for peace, but for control. They built the empire on silence. She whispered, trembling, and buried anyone who remembered. Elias felt rage rise, not wild, but cold and focused. They are about to lose that silence. The first enemy volley slammed into the ancient warship again. Harder now, beams tearing across its shields, alarms flaring crimson. The ship shuddered, power drains spiking as multiple fleets joined the assault. Not just the hunters who came for her, but reinforcements answering a deeper fear. She staggered, clutching her head, the bond amplifying everything. They are calling it a joint insurrection, human and alien. They are invoking emergency unification law. Elias knew enough to understand what that meant. Entire sectors would burn before authority admitted weakness. This was no longer about one outlaw or one ranch. This was about the story the galaxy told itself. On distant worlds, news feeds flickered alive before being shut down. Glimpses of the ancient ship, fragments of her data crystal, proof leaking faster than sensors could contain. Soldiers hesitated in barracks light years away. Civilians whispered names long forbidden. The law is fracturing, she said, awe and terror mingling. But they will respond with annihilation. As if summoned by the words, a new presence darkened the sky, far larger than the warships already engaged. A dread platform sliding out of fold space like a judgment made real, weapons capable of sterilizing planets, its insignia unmistakable, the high enforcement authority, the final answer. Elias felt the weight of it settle over the bond, over the ship, over the choice he had made. How many will die because of this? She met his gaze, eyes wet but fierce. How many already have? The ancient ship system screamed warnings, power limits exceeded, enemy mass beyond projected tolerance. The voice shifted, grave. Sanctuary cannot withstand full authority strike. Evacuation probability minimal. Elias's chest tightened. So this is how it ends. No, she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the noise. There is another protocol. The ship hesitated, then responded, contingency archive sealed, access restricted. She closed her eyes, pain rippling through the bond as she forced the link deeper, overriding safeguards with her blood and will. I was not just a princess, she said, voice shaking. I was bred as a keystone. My species was engineered to stabilize alliances, to bind systems together. Understanding crashed into Elias, you mean? I can amplify this bond, she said, turn sanctuary into a broadcast, not just proof but invitation. The danger spiked instantly, alarms blaring, the ship protesting, cascading warnings of neural overload, irreversible identity loss, potential death. If you do this, Elias said, fear breaking through at last, you might not survive. She smiled at him then, truly smiled, and it shattered him. I survived everything else, this at least will mean something. Outside, the dread platform charged its main weapon, space warping around it, the countdown echoing across every channel, a promise of erasure. She reached up, touching Elias's face, grounding herself in him. In humanity, stay with me. She whispered, do not let go. He pressed his forehead to hers, tears burning. I am here. The bond flared brighter than before, the ancient ship becoming a beacon, not of war, but of truth, transmissions blasting across the galaxy. Unfiltered, unstoppable, revealing massacres, false laws, erased peoples, human and alien crimes intertwined. A history too vast to silence. Across the stars, fleets faltered, some turning away, some powering down, others firing anyway. Civil wars igniting in real time as soldiers chose sides, as planets declared autonomy, as old alliances shattered. The dread platform fired. The blast tore through space, but the ancient ship met it head-on. Shields collapsing, hull screaming, energy pouring through the bond. Elias felt agony, felt her pain magnified 1,000-fold, felt her consciousness fray at the edges. Hold on, he begged, voice breaking. She laughed softly through the pain. If I fade, remember me as free. The explosion swallowed the sky, light consuming everything, and in that blinding moment, the galaxy changed forever, because even if this world burned, the truth was already loose, and no empire, no law, no warship could ever put it back in chains. The light faded slowly, not into darkness, but into silence so deep it felt unreal. Elias could not tell if his eyes were open or closed, if his body still existed or if he had become nothing more than a thought drifting between moments. Pain pulsed through him in waves, distant yet intimate, like an echo of someone else's suffering braided with his own. Her presence was still there, faint but unmistakable, a warmth in the void, fragile and flickering, alive. He clung to that feeling with everything he had, refusing to let it slip away. "Stay with me," he whispered into the bond, not knowing if sound mattered anymore. A response came slowly, uneven, like breath after near drowning. "I am here, but barely." Relief hit him so hard it almost broke him. The ancient warship groaned around them, systems failing, hull breaches spreading like wounds. The voice of command fractured, power levels critical, sanctuary integrity compromised, yet still functioning. Outside, the galaxy reeled. The dread platform hung damaged but not destroyed, its weapon burned out, its authority shaken. Around it fleets had scattered, some retreating, some turning their guns on former allies. The broadcast had done its work too well, chaos blooming everywhere at once. On distant worlds, crowds filled streets despite curfews, chanting names long erased, soldiers removed insignia and refused orders. Councils collapsed mid-session as evidence flooded public channels. The law that claimed to be eternal cracked under the weight of its own lies. But here, at the center of it all, the cost was coming due. Elias struggled to sit, his body responding sluggishly, nerves screaming. The bond pulled at him, warning, protecting, demanding more than he knew how to give. He felt her slipping, her consciousness thinning, stretched too far by the broadcast. "You are fading," he said, fear raw and unguarded now. She did not deny it. "My mind is not built for this, for holding so many truths at once, for being a bridge." The ancient ship interrupted, voice dim, neural bond destabilizing, one interface failing, command collapse imminent. Elias's heart hammered, panic rising. What happens if command collapses? The ship answered without mercy. Sanctuary fails. All systems shut down. Hostile forces will regain control. The dread platform's engines flared again, damaged but deadly. The enemy commander barking orders filled with rage and desperation. Prepare second strike. Eliminate the relic and all associated life. Elias felt the universe narrowing again, the familiar tightening of fate. But this time he understood something new. The bond was not one-sided. It was not just her carrying the weight. "I can help," he said suddenly, the words tearing free before doubt could stop them. She looked at him through the bond, surprise flickering. "You are human, Elias. Your mind is not conditioned for this." "Neither was yours," he replied, "but you did it anyway." The ship's sensors spiked, neural resonance increasing, warning tones cascading. Elias pushed deeper into the bond, not trying to control the ship, not trying to command fleets, but anchoring her, grounding the flood of truth in something solid, something simple. Land, sky, breath, touch, memory. He thought of the ranch, of quiet mornings, of work that made sense, of choosing to stand when running would have been easier. He let those feelings flow into the bond, not as power, but as stability. She gasped, the effect immediate, her consciousness steadied, not stronger, but clearer, focused. "Elias," she whispered, "you are acting as a stabilizer." The ship confirmed it, neural equilibrium improving, dual interface harmonizing, sanctuary protocol holding. Outside, the dread platform fired again, a weaker blast this time, but still enough to finish them if it connected. The ancient ship rerouted power desperately, shields flickering, weapons offline, escape vectors blocked. Elias felt the fear surge again, but now it did not paralyze him, it sharpened him. "How do we stop it?" She hesitated, then showed him the truth, not in words, but in shared understanding. The ancient ship was not built to win wars. It was built to end them. Its final protocol was not destruction, but choice. "There is one signal left," she said, "a command only we can authorize together." He felt it then, the weight of it. Broadcast ceasefire, open sanctuary, invite every fleet, every world to stand down or be exposed fully. No more secrets, no more shadows. "If we do this," Elias said, "they will never stop hunting us." She answered softly, "They already never will." The dread platform charged its weapon one last time, its crew terrified now, clinging to obedience as the galaxy burned around them. "Do it," Elias said, voice steady despite the terror. "Let them see us." The bond flared again, not painfully this time, but fiercely, human resolve braided with alien sacrifice. The ancient ship pulsed, and a final transmission erupted across all channels. Not an order, an offer. Stand down or be seen. Across the stars, fleets froze, commanders hesitated, soldiers watched their own past scroll across their displays. Atrocities undeniable, choices unavoidable. The dread platform's weapon faltered, then powered down, its commander screaming unheard rage as authority dissolved around him. Silence fell again, different this time, heavy with consequence. Elias felt her presence weaken further, the effort draining what little strength she had left, her consciousness dimming like a dying star. Stay with me, he begged, tears burning. She smiled through the bond. Gentle now, I am tired, Elias, but I am not afraid. The ship stabilized, sanctuary secure, hostile forces withdrawing, the galaxy holding its breath. Elias held onto her as tightly as he could, pouring himself into the bond, into her, refusing to let the light go out, because the climax was no longer about victory or law or destiny. It was about whether sacrifice had to mean losing everything. And somewhere between the wreckage of empires and the quiet pull of a human heart, fate hesitated, deciding what it would take next. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, heavy with everything that had been said and could never be unsaid. The ancient warship drifted above the scarred ranch like a guardian too old to rest, its lights dim but steady. The dread platform hung powerless in the distance, surrounded by fleets that no longer knew who they were meant to obey. Elias felt the bond thin again, softer now, no alarms, no screaming warnings, just a quiet slipping. Like sand through fingers, he held on anyway, pouring himself into it, memories, stubbornness, love he had not planned for but could no longer deny. I am here, he whispered, stay. Her presence flickered, then steadied just enough to answer. You did not let go, she said, wonder and tenderness threading her voice. Most would have. He laughed weakly, tears tracking down his face. I have spent my whole life holding on to land that tried to kill me. You are not harder than that. The ancient ship spoke, no longer cold or distant, but almost gentle, neural bond transitioning, permanent integration available, survival probability increases if one interface accepts full anchoring role. Elias understood instantly what it meant, the twist within the ending revealing itself clearly at last. She had given everything to keep the truth alive, but the bond had changed him too. The ship no longer needed two commanders to fight, it needed one to endure. If I anchor her, he asked quietly, what happens to me? The answer came without hesitation. You will never be only human again. Your life will be extended, altered, bound to sanctuary, to memory, to responsibility. Elias closed his eyes, thinking of the ranch, of quiet nights, of a future he once believed was small enough to survive by staying hidden. Then he felt her fear for the first time, not of death, but of being alone again. Do not do this for me, she said softly, I chose my path. He opened his eyes, resolve settling like sunrise. I am choosing mine. He accepted the anchoring. The bond deepened, not painfully, but completely. Elias felt the ship open to him, not as a weapon, but as a witness, centuries of watching, waiting, hoping. He felt her consciousness pulled back from the edge, stabilized, wrapped gently into the sanctuary he now embodied. She breathed, truly breathed, relief washing through her like rain on burned ground. Elias, she whispered, awe and emotion breaking her composure at last. You stayed. Always, he replied. Across the galaxy, the consequences unfolded like aftershocks. The high enforcement authority fractured within hours. Worlds seceded, councils dissolved, emergency laws repealed under public pressure too massive to ignore. Human and alien alike stood trial for crimes once hidden behind legality. Some called Elias and the alien princess terrorists, others called them liberators. History struggled to name them, but the truth no longer needed permission. On the ranch world, the skies cleared slowly, fleets withdrew, soldiers laid down arms, investigators arrived not to arrest, but to record, to listen, to rebuild. The ancient warship descended at last, settling into the land it had guarded for generations, no longer hidden, no longer silent. Days passed, then weeks. Elias stood beneath open sky again, boots in familiar soil, the land unchanged yet forever different. She stood beside him now in the flesh, weaker, scarred anew, but alive, her legal identity erased, her titles gone, no longer princess or outlaw, just herself. They watched the sun sink behind the hills, quiet between them, comfortable, earned. What happens now? She asked finally. Elias smiled faintly, the kind of smile that came from surviving the impossible. Now we build something honest, something small enough to care about people, and strong enough to stand when law forgets why it exists. She looked at him, eyes shining. You were meant to inherit a warship. He shook his head. I inherited a choice. She took his hand, no armor, no weapons, just warmth and certainty, and leaned into him, the bond between them no longer burning, but steady, like a hearth fire. The ancient ship watched silently, its purpose fulfilled not in destruction, but in preservation, sanctuary reborn not as a secret, but as a promise. Far beyond this quiet world, the galaxy reshaped itself slowly, painfully, but truth had momentum now, and destiny had chosen an unlikely anchor. A human rancher who refused to kneel, an alien woman who refused to obey. Together, they did not rule the future. They made room for it, and under a wide, forgiving sky, where cattle grazed and scars healed, fate finally exhaled, satisfied that this time, it had been met not with fear, but with courage held long enough to change everything.